everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about the difference between falcons and hawks. It's an important subject, and I think it's good for people to know in general, not only people who want to get into falconry, but just in general, it's good for people to understand and know that difference. Before we jump in though, if you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe, it very much helps me keep this channel up and running. So, jumping into this subject here, one of the reasons why I want to mention this difference is a lot of people are kind of oblivious to birds of prey. They just aren't. The birds of prey are everywhere. They fill every environment that humans habitate on the planet. There's some sort of raptor species that live there. They are highly successful, and it's good to know. It's good to know the world that you are a part of. And I think that sometimes people think we need to dumb things down. We don't. I'll give you an example. Scientific names of animals. People are like, oh, that's kind of hard having to do a Latin name. How many kids can say Tyrannosaurus rex? How many can say Styracosaurus or Triceratops? These are scientific names. Little kids learn the scientific names of dinosaurs. So understanding just some basic biology, I think is very healthy, normal, and I think we should be raising ourselves up to a higher standard. Now, one of the things that bugs me, I love Egypt. I love modern Egypt. I love ancient Egypt. And my favorite falcon species is the lanner falcon. They're really iconic. They're beautiful birds. And they're very distinct. And this is basically, in ancient Egypt, it was a deity figure on its own, just the falcon. But also, there were several falcon-headed gods, including the Egyptian god Horus, which that's actually the Greek version. The Egyptians pronounce it Hor, H-O-R, which obviously that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue and can have a different connotation if it's not written out. But Horus, the Egyptian falcon-headed god, was sometimes depicted as a man, or a man with a falcon's head, or as a straight-up falcon. But again, there's many birds of prey in Egypt that were larger than lanner falcons. However, the lanner falcon was given the distinction of being kind of like the symbol of authority, the symbol of the national bird. And this goes way back very far. One of the titles of the pharaoh was the falcon. He was the falcon. And this goes all the way back to a palette when the first pharaoh attributed with uniting Upper and Lower Egypt was Pharaoh Narmer. And there's a palette where he is shown smiting his enemies, and he is lifting up their heads. And behind his back, you have a falcon. It's primitive. It's very old, so it's a very primitive depiction. Falcon helping him in this endeavor. And so this idea of the authority coming from the falcon is extremely ancient. Why am I bringing this up? What does this have to do with the difference between falcons and hawks? I get really frustrated with newer kids' books coming out. They're introductions to Egypt. And they call Horus the hawk-headed god. He's not a hawk, it's a falcon. It's very clearly a falcon with this very specialized beak and a mallard stripe. It's a falcon. And I think the thinking is, well, kids aren't that smart. So, you know, we'll call it a hawk. A hawk. Most kids have heard of a hawk. So we'll say it's a hawk-headed god. How about you call it what it is, a falcon-headed god, and then the kid can be like, Mom, Dad, what's a falcon? Then you can go to a video like this and find out the difference. What is a falcon? What is a hawk? It's important to know the difference, and we're going to get into it. They're very different. We're going to do hawks in a second because we actually have to split that up. We're going to start with falcons. Falcons are weird. They're unusual. But let me sum it up. If you get nothing else out of this, what is the difference between a falcon and a hawk? A falcon is like a high-performance race car. It's all flash and dash. It needs special fuel and special equipment, and you have to, treat it tenderly and make sure it's got all the right whatever. A hawk is like a Jeep or a truck. It's rough, it's rugged, it's not as fast as a falcon, but it's probably going to get the job done better in the end. It's going to get you there. That's how I try to quickly explain the difference. Falcon is like a race car, hawk is like a Jeep or a truck. But we're going to get more into the hawks in a bit. So let's talk about falcons. One of the first things about them, they do not build a nest. All other technical raptor species, your eagles and all your other hawks and even caracaras, which caracaras are related to falcons, but they build a nest. Falcons don't build a nest. From the smallest of the kestrels to the largest of gyrfalcons. They just simply do not build a nest whatsoever. Now, sometimes you will see images of them on a nest. They'll take over a nest. They'll find a ledge. Oh, here's an old raven nest, or here's an old red-tailed hawk nest. Maybe I'll nest in it. But just like owls do not build a nest, same thing. Falcons do not build a nest, but all the other traditional diurnal raptors are nest builders. So we don't know why that is, but they'll just pick a ledge. Smaller ones will pick a hollow tree. Some of them, like peregrine falcons, are very well known for, nesting on cliff edges or even nesting on big old office buildings in cities where they can hunt pigeons from. That's a cliff. But in the tropics, you get like into Vietnam and the Philippines, some of those kind of areas, the peregrine falcons there, they will find a hollow tree, a big, giant tropical hollow tree, and nest in it. So that is one of the important things to say that most people don't mention. Falcons do not build a nest. And again, all your other traditional diurnal raptors do. So falcons have something on their beak. Their beak is short. It's very wide and thick and powerful. And they have a notch in it. It's called a tomial tooth. It's not a tooth, but that's what it's called. And that extra notch allows them, and not all falcons use it in this way, but it's what they're built to do, is a falcon is built to, once it has its prey on the ground, is it will bend down and snap the neck to make sure the prey will not struggle. Now that might sound, oh, how terrible. Well, most other raptors and other predators eat their prey alive. So a falcon makes sure that their prey is dead before they start eating. Why do they do that? Oh, is it because they're compassionate? No. It's because in general, one of the attributes of falcons is falcons have comparatively stiff, plasticky feathers. These feathers are very rigid, which causes less air resistance, and I'll tell why that's important in a minute. They have very stiff, plasticky feathers that are good for diving, but then on the ground, if you're struggling with prey, those feathers could get broken more easily because they're more brittle. They're stiffer, they're more plasticky than that of hawks. So you don't want that. So a falcon, once it has its prey on the ground, will typically bend down and go to snap the neck. I even see it even with things as small as a kestrel hunting a grasshopper, and once it's on the ground, and make sure that the neck is snapped. So that's what that notch is for. When we're talking about falcons, the quintessential falcons are what are called the hero falcons, that are kind of like the ancestral falcons of all falcons. So that would be the gyrfalcon, which is the largest falcon in the world, the saker falcon, which is the second largest falcon in the world, and will even interbreed in the wild with gyrfalcons where the ranges overcross, the lanner falcon, which is my favorite, beautiful birds, the lugger falcon, it's also called a lagger, the lagger or lugger falcon, and the Australian black falcon. Those five constitute the hierofalcons. And the hierofalcons are kind of the most ancestral of all falcons, the most falcons of all falcons. But there's a lot of other side lineages. For example, there's the hobbies, which I did a recent video covering every single species of hobby falcon in the world. These are much more aerial and acrobatic, and they will hunt a lot more insects. They'll hunt birds and stuff too, but they're much more of like catching an insect on the wing hunter. There's also the kestrels, and the kestrel lineage is, kind of an interesting one all over the world. They have a more hawk-like lifestyle. They will still hunt birds, but they prefer to hunt rodents, which is not a very falconish thing, and I'll get into that in a minute. But so there's many species of kestrels in the world, and again, they will hover in one place, and they will be more of I'm just going to sit around and look over fields for a mouse or a rat or a vole to hunt. It's primarily what most kestrels want to do. So again, there are some different falcon lineages, but when you're basically talking about a falcon, then it's these big falcons that are considered the higher falcons. Now, the most famous falcon is the peregrine falcon, because it is the most widespread falcon in the world. So it lives almost everywhere. So the chances are you probably have peregrine falcons in wherever you live. Now, there's a wide range of color morphs when it comes to these. Here in America, the two we have here in the West, we have the biggest peregrine in the world, which is the Peale's peregrine. It's the biggest, and I love flying them, but arguably the grouchiest. And we also have anatoms, which our anatoms get surprisingly red. But there are many different types of peregrines all over the world. Among some of the most famous and really kind of specialized are the red-naped Shaheen, which from the people I've talked to who have flown them say they're the best peregrine to fly. And the black Shaheen, which is very striking coloration. So again, there's a wide range of falcons. But falcons are primarily built to hunt other birds. They're built to do it on the wing, which means they don't want to catch something on the ground. Falcons are primarily built to hunt with momentum. Now, I'm saying primarily because, again, there's exceptions, and I'll get to that in a second. But a falcon ideally will be up above and will have already built up, either it'll be in a dive, which we call a stoop, and it'll knock a bird out of the air, or it will dive and be chasing and the bird's already in the air. Birds know this. So like pigeons, if pigeons take off and a falcon's coming after them, they will go back to the ground because they know a falcon to hit a bird on the ground has got to slow way down, and that might have a chance for the pigeon to sidestep and go the other direction. So falcons, high-performance birds, they have to flap nonstop. They really cannot soar or glide. Now, once you're getting up on thermals, you can take a couple seconds to stop flapping when you make a turn. But basically, falcons are non-stop flapping. And again, they are built to catch birds of all different sizes, including often far bigger than them. So something like a peregrine falcon, a pigeon would be a normal meal, but they'll hunt things up to the size of geese and ducks and pheasants and sage grouse, really large prey. They're too big for them to fly away with. They'll just knock it out of the sky, and then the prey falls to the ground, and they slow back around. They grab it on the ground, they bend down, they bite the neck, snap the neck, and then they eat it where they caught it. That is what a falcon wants to do. That is how a falcon wants to live. Now, their toes are very interesting. Their toes are incredibly long. That's for catching a bird. But their rear talons and their rear toes are short with very long talons. Because if a falcon is going top speed and it wants to hit a bird, like let's say you have a pigeon flying up and a falcon's diving in, it will rake it. It will just make a pass with its back legs and aim for the neck and try to just snap the neck of that bird. Why do they do that? Because they can go over 100 miles an hour. If you have a falcon going over 100 miles an hour and running into their prey going full speed, they can explode. They literally could explode. You imagine that. Imagine if I was holding a watermelon on the side of the street and you were just going on down the freeway 80 miles an hour and you stick your head out and poof, and that hits. I mean, think about the power. So it's better to do just a quick graze with your rear toes. And so on falcons, birds have hollow bones, but on falcons, the legs are very short, they're very stout, and I have seen and have even had the chance in a lab to dissect the leg bones of a peregrine falcon and see for myself the leg bones and toe bones of a peregrine falcon are incredibly dense, unlike the rest of their body, because again, they're designed to handle incredible impact running into prey. So you need that. So having a short rear toe, long rear talon, short rear toe is good for raking by prey. But then once you have it on the ground, you're using mostly those front toes, which are incredibly long, to hold down your prey while you snap the neck. So that is the build of a falcon. Long, skinny, narrow, pointed wings, typically a long tail, having to flap non-stop, other than a quick little turn, flapping non-stop to stay up, very fast and level flight. In a dive, the fastest animals on the planet are falcons, and very short legs with very long toes. Basically a bird hunter. Now again, there's exceptions. Again, like kestrels have slightly shorter toes because the kestrel family is going after more rodents, and a rodent's going to turn around and try to bite you with those chisel teeth that rodents have. You don't want that. And so having shorter, thicker toes is a better protection for quickly trying to dispatch a rodent without getting your toes bit off. So even though kestrels are falcons, they're built a little different. They're started to kind of move to being a little more hawk-like in their build, but again, they are still a falcon. So falcons, amazing species, don't even build a nest. Live all over the world. They prefer open country. They will, if they have to, nest like on forest edges and stuff, but they're not built for flying through trees at all. They're built for momentum and speed and quick turns, and that's how they live. So that would be falcons. Now, what about hawks? Well, you can't just say hawk because there's basically kind of two hawks in the traditional sense. The first one is the true hawks, or the accipiters. Now, I am making this video in 2025, and recently Taxonomists have mixed things up, and they have divided the genus accipiter and broadened it out. And it's kind of frustrating because some of the most accipiter of all accipiters now have a different name that I can't remember off the top of my head. So, for simplification, when I'm saying accipiters, I'm saying what my entire life up until now, everything that has been considered an accipiter. And now they're just like, well, there's too many of them, we got to divide it up a little. Fine, whatever. So, accipiters, or true hawks, are forest hawks. They are built for speed. They're almost the exact opposite of a falcon in every way. They have very short, rounded wings, and they have a very long tail, and they have incredibly long legs. They have comparatively short toes with long, oversized talons. Now, these come in a wide range of sizes, from the goshawks, or the biggest of the accipiters. There's many different types of goshawks, all the way down to little things like sharp-shinned hawks, which are pretty close in size to an American kestrel. They're quite small. But all of these birds are delicate, they're fast, they're flashy, and the frame rate, they have the highest frame rate that they perceive of any raptor. So in other words, like if you go like this, like even right now, see this, my hand waving, okay, you see a motion blur. They don't see that. They would see that would stay in focus. Even at that speed, that would stay in focus the whole time. They have a quicker ability to respond, kind of like cats. You know, you throw something at a cat and they catch it. They just instantly have this spontaneous stimulus response to movement and motion. Accipiters, you know, their eyes are bugging out of their head a little bit. They're very lightweight, and they are not at all about momentum killing, where a falcon is about diving and then... Okay, a hawk is a true hawk, and accipiters, they're about flash and dash, and their agility is insane. If you want to look up some fun stuff, go online and look up goshawks flying through anything. Look up goshawk flying through, and you'll find there's where scientists have put slow motion cameras. They set them up and they have them fly through tubes. They have them fly through like fence posts, and you just see how they can just they just contort their body, and their head stays perfectly focused the whole time. They're amazing. They're incredible to fly. They're incredible to work with. Accipiters build a nest, a stick nest. They will usually have the same grove, but these stick nests are not very good nests, and for many of these species, the nest won't last. They might return to the same nest, but more importantly, they will typically return to the same grove of trees year after year. They might pick another one because, again, these nests are rudimentary. They're not very good, and it's just part of what they do. Now, one of the things is these accipiters will typically put fresh greenery, especially fresh evergreen sprigs, all around their nest, and some great work has been done on this, and it's found that actually this is a way to try to prevent aspergillosis. This is a fungal growth that happens in the lungs of birds if they're inactive. If you're breathing heavy, then any spores, asper spores are everywhere, then it can expel out. But if you're a mom incubating eggs, well, then you're not being very active, and it's much easier, especially in a humid forest, for asperspores to take root. And so having the pine resins in front of you, the terpenes, are what will kill that asperspores. So we've noticed, and great studies have been done on this. I've done videos actually about this if you go through my channel, but this is something that hawks do. Falcons don't do anything like that. Falcons are just like, Here's a cliff face. Well, let's lay some eggs. Where hawks are like, no, we're going to have a very specific nest, and we're going to keep stocking up, fir boughs or pine boughs or spruce boughs, something that is giving off that off-gassing and those terpenes to kill asperspores that might try to take root in the lungs of the birds. So, again, opposite of a falcon in every way. True hawks, accipiters, have short rounded wings, long tail, long legs, short toes, very long talons, and they'll catch anything. They will hunt birds and they will hunt mammals. And it depends on what size you are. They're more built for going after birds, but they will go after mammals just fine. And it just depends on what food availability is in the area. For example, goshawks we think of as being supreme bird hunters. However, here in Utah, they, during the breeding season, hunt almost exclusively Uinta ground squirrels. They base their entire breeding cycle off of those. Food availability, hey, we got food here, let's capitalize off it. That's what they hunt. But they don't have to. They're really good at going after birds as well. But it's not like a falcon is where a hawk is catch. Okay, so that's true hawks. Very short beak, but not a very powerful beak. The power, again, for them lies in the feet, where a falcon knocks them down and then snaps the neck. Okay, the other group of hawks that we call hawks in America are actually buzzards. So a red-tailed hawk is, in the United States, probably the most iconic and recognizable of the buzzards. So people outside of the United States understand this. People outside of the United States use the term buzzard properly. For example, in Europe, there's a bird called the common buzzard. And you see it and you're like, oh, that looks like a cousin of a red-tailed hawk. Yeah, we should be calling a red-tailed hawk a red-tailed buzzard. Unfortunately, in America, people coming into America, the idea, okay, buzzards are not as good of hunting as hawks, true hawks, like accipiters. And so old-time falconers said, oh, a buzzard is not a good bird. So buzzard was kind of a derogatory term. It's kind of like a lesser hawk. And so some of the people in the early United States would use that term for any soaring bird. So they also use it for vultures. Now, vultures, like turkey vultures, are not at all related to buzzards or hawks or eagles. They're not. But there's even people call them, still to this day, call them turkey buzzards. They're like a turkey buzzard. Oh, it's an old turkey buzzard. It's like, no, it's not a buzzard. Now, that would not make sense outside of the United States. In the United States, like, yeah, it's a turkey buzzard. No, a buzzard is a soaring hawk. A red-tailed hawk is a buzzard. The word buzzard does not mean vulture at all. So buzzards of all kinds, like a red-tailed hawk, they are built entirely different than either true hawks or falcons. These are soaring birds. They're built like little versions of like a golden eagle. So these are birds with very long but very broad wings, where, you know, a falcon has long, narrow wings. So they have a long tail. Most of them have a long tail. They have long wings. They have long legs. They have short toes, and they have big talons. So these are birds that are built for soaring. They can fly endlessly without having to flap. Most of them target rodents for their food of some kind, from as small as a tiny mouse to as big as prairie dogs or even rabbits. So these are the buzzards, which are the soaring hawks, or the taxonomic group is called the bootios. So you have falcons, accipiters, and bootios. And again, accipiters have been divided up, but it still applies. So these are your three main groups, and they're very different in how they live and what they do, but it's important to know the difference. And again, I think you can just sum it up. Think of a so think of a falcon as a high-performance race car. Think of a buzzard, like a red-tailed hawk, as being a Jeep or a truck. And then maybe think of an accipiter as some of those fancy off-road vehicles that are built to just like go rock hopping and driving fast and jumping over sand dunes and those kind of things, like some of those ATVs. Maybe that's more like an accipiter. Super agile, super fast, super able to get through and get things done. So those are the difference between falcons and hawks. I hope that makes sense. I hope you understand the difference. But again, if you look very closely, just even at the wing shape, you know, again, if you're looking at the shape of a falcon, long pointed wings, long tail. You're looking at an accipiter, short rounded wings, long tail. And you're looking at a buzzard or a buteo that have long, broad wings and a long tail. It's important to know the difference, especially if you're getting into falconry. So I hope you enjoyed learning more about these birds. If you haven't already, if you could please hit subscribe, I very much appreciate it. If you want to support me on Patreon, the link is in the description down below. And as always, happy hawking.